بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Today we are going to talk about one of my favorite scholar, one of the great scholar of economic thought, at the same time sociology. He's been a scholar in many disciplines of knowledge. I think that is what he's been father of not only one discipline, many disciplines, namely he's been into, of course we all know about economics. Other than economics, he's been into historiography, he's been father of sociology and demography, right? So I think this is a scholar, Abu Zaid Abdul Rahman ibn Muhammad ibn Khaldun al-Hadrami. So his name is Abdul Rahman, right? He was born in 27 May. He was born in 27 May 1332, right? So he was an Arab scholar of Islam, social scientist, people call him. Has been, of course, he was far ahead of many scholars who came later. He actually many centuries, even 3 to 5 centuries ago, when people talk about economics, like Adam Smith and all, at least 300 years ago, 400 years ago. So he's actually he's a 14th century scholar, though he died in 1406. It doesn't mean that he became the 15th century scholar, because he lived only 6 years in the 1406. But he should be considered as a 14th century scholar. So I think many even Western scholars, I think most of them, they prized him. They accepted that he is one of the greatest scholars, greatest philosophers of Middle Age. That's all because of his work, his magnum opus, the great work of Prolegomena, right? Which is actually al-Muqaddimah, we call it. So we will come back to it. We will tell you what exactly the book Muqaddimah. Is there a book written by the name of Muqaddimah, or it is the book of Kitab al-Ibar? If it is Kitab al-Ibar, then what exactly the book talks about, and then what is the role that Muqaddimah is playing in that book. Yeah, so we will come back to that. Let me just tell you that this great scholar has many he has many things that he started looking into it. He's the first scholar who observed the history and then started writing the most amazing observations through his writing. If some historian can also, because rather than just narrating the stories, of course is actually also narrating the history of every Arab and non-Arabs, from until his time, from the beginning of the time until his time. But what most importantly, that he actually giving a kind of synopsis, about his entire around 7 to 8 volumes of the book. He extracting all the points, and then he is giving you a kind of observations from the history. What was done, what should be done, what is the right thing to do, what will happen if you do this, if you choose this way, and what it will lead to. If you produce like this, then how it will be distributed. So these are the things that he observed. So he must be, he must be, it looks like the way he wrote, it looks like that he has been in many places. And then he has a, I would say like a eagle eye, because the object that eagle looking into it, it always fly off the limit of the sky, sky limit. There is no limit for that. There is no limit actually in the sky. So when an eagle goes up, and then an eagle eye, when I say it covers everything. So it's a kind of experience, kind of observation, Imam Ibn Khaldun is actually doing. And most probably people who know Ibn Khaldun for his sociology and for his uh, economics, um, of course they most of them, they know him for this. They assume that he is not the scholar of you know other disciplines other than what, because his work didn't talk about the other disciplines. Because if you look at his book, which he wrote very late, he didn't write at the beginning. He wrote it like last 20 years, last 30 years, 10 years, In fact, Muqaddimah, he wrote it in only 6 months. It seems like, yes, he took that genre to, to do his work. But what you need to know that he's been teaching hadith. He's been teaching Quran and tafsir. He's been teaching fiqh for his entire life. He was a Sheikh al-Hadith in Azhar University, Cairo. He's been to Tunis and then Fez, and then he went to Cairo, and then comes forth and going going back, coming back and forth. So I think uh, he's been into so many positions, and then he became the judge. Yeah, so I think it's a lot of things that he dealt with people. In fact, I also came to know he has some other works which is not quite popular. He has a great work in Sufism as well. I was looking into that book, amazing book, Shifa Us-Sa'il. It's a kind of shifa. If you want to know, if you are um, the one who asks questions, then there is a shifa in terms of tasawwuf. I think he wrote a great book there. Very very few books only. I think a couple of them only. Ibn Khaldun. Of course, his great book Muqaddimah, as I told you, is a part of Kitab al-Ibar, which we will come back later. But what I'm trying to tell, that he is not only a socialist or economist. He's a great scholar of Islam. He's a great scholar of Hadith. He's a great scholar of fiqh. So that one we should keep in mind. Everything that he observed and he started writing, he doesn't write from only from his historical background. History of his observation. He also knew everything about fiqh, everything about hadith. I think that made him observe and then write and then do the right thing. Yeah, I think. Okay, with that note, just let's go inside. Right, his life, of course, historian, politician, socialist, economist. I just want to add here also, uh, you know, uh, Islamic scholar as well. He's also a jurist. He's a scholar of jurisprudence. He's a scholar of hadith, especially. It must be mentioned here, muhaddith. Yeah, this is what I wanted to tell. All right, so uh, Yasbon has been compared to some other scholars like Machiavelli, Descartes, Vico, Teschi, all these Hegel. We talked about earlier. Even the later the one people who came, Karl Marx, Durkheim, all these. These are the scholars of Renaissance, right? So I think they consider, because according to if you look at the life of Ibn Khaldun, and then you look at work of Ibn Khaldun, um, it looks like two different things to me. Right, that's what my observation. Of course, we are going to talk about his life first, and then we will come to work. Yeah, um, look at his life, and then I will come back to. I will let you know how you compare with his work. So he was born in Tunis, 1332, died in Egypt, 1406. MashaAllah, almost, um, 68 plus 6, 74 years, mashallah. He lived there. It's been divided into three parts. His life has been divided in three parts: the first 20 years, and then the next 23 years, and then the last 31 years. If you look at his work, I mean his life, and then we have these three phases. This is what Western scholars talks about him. Of course, he's a great philosopher, historian, socialist, right? He's been indexed in so many list of scholars. They call him social scientist. All right. When Arnold Toynbee talk about him, he says that this is the work no one has done this before. It is true. No one has done the work that he has done. Uh, Something new in that genre, because he's formulated a philosophy of history which is undoubtedly the greatest of everything. It's not been created by any mind in any time or place before. Okay, this is the first phase, 1332 to 1352. So it's about 17 years. He was, of course, he's from the upper class aristocratic family. His father, his grandfather, all, mashallah, also scholars, and then also they worked closely with government of that time. Um, and then see this, he's been learning so many things. He was in Tunis, of course, he's a Tunis scholar, right? So he's been there. So many refugees used to come from Spain to Tunis. There were wars going on, going up, things are up and down. So many refugees used to come from Spain, and then he used to go to them and then start learning from them, whatever they know. His great grandfather, Abu Bakr bin al Hassan, who also wrote a book, Adab al-Katib. Al-Katib is actually a kind of secretary, you may call it. Katib, someone who writes. What is the etiquettes of the secretary? It's a kind of book. He has done it. His grandfather, Muhammad, occupied various positions. Yeah. Of course, he has in Tunis, he gone through extensive education. He studied Quran and Quranic sciences under the guidance of Sheikh Muhammad bin Sa'ad al-Burral. And then he learned also from other scholars like, Muhammad bin Arabi al-Hussein, Muhammad bin al-Shawwas, al-Zarzali. I think there are so many scholars, I think he learned. Sorry about it. Okay. In fact, yes, he also studied tradition. This is what I told you, traditions, hadith. He learned from many scholars of Tunis, right? Shamsuddin Muhammad bin Jabir bin Sultan al-Wadiyashi. He learned jurisprudence from Muhammad bin Abdullah al-Jayyani, right? He was also follower of Ibn Rushd, Ibn Sina, al-Farabi, al-Razi. In fact, there is a book, actually, he is giving some sort of commentary to Imam al-Razi. That book, I don't think that I can find. I'm still searching that book. Fakhruddin Razi that we learned earlier is a tafsir that he wrote, right? Tafsir al-Kabir. We talked about Imam Razi earlier, right? So Ibn Khaldun also written something on it. Of course, these are the stories that, what he was doing within his 17 years. I think you can go through all this, just reading material. Then it comes to second phase. In the second phase, he has to leave because it's like, he was in Tunis, then he has to go to Fez. Perhaps, because of if you go to the earlier slide, you will know that there were some problem, like for example, plague, And then even there was a changes of the ruler, and then they have to, because their family was was in the political charges, I mean, sorry, political responsibilities they had, and they were doing the political jobs. So once the rule change, of course they have to leave, and then they have to go to different places. They went, so he left Tunis for Fez. Then he was in Fez. Then again he was there for some time. Then again he went back to Tunis because of the ruler of that time appointed him as a master of signature for Sultan. Then again he was there. He was appointed as a secretary to the Sultan. I mean, secretary to the state by Sultan Abu Inan. So these are the around 20 plus years. I think he was in the administration. I remember he was learning education, then he was in administration for almost 20 plus years. So I think all these slides will talk about his administration. Then that last phase, which is actually starting from 1375 until he died 1406. So these are the time, he started, uh, he had his observation of his own around, I think, if I'm not mistaken, around 40, 20 plus 17, 19, so almost 40 plus years. Around his 40 plus years, whatever he observed, he thought he wanted to write. And from here, I think he started also teaching and writing. In fact, he was actually seeking refuge with one of the ruler, just for the sake of writing the Muqaddimah. He was actually, because you see, when I was going through his life, let me tell you, his life is not that easy life. I tell you, his life is actually um, uh, moving around so many places. It's not like he stay in one place and he was comfortably, when there is no comfortable, because what they call it today, they call it, you need to look for discomfort. You need to look for discomfort in order to get more experience, and discomfort will make you to achieve something. When you are very comfortable, it's like you become very lazy, by the way. Even myself also, if I have to drive a car which is very good, very smooth, very very soft, while I'm driving I might end up sleeping, because it's a kind of thing. When I sit in the car, aircon, and the road is super clear, good. So it's like, so discomfort is always is something. When you are actually driving in a hill, for example, you are going up to Genting Highland or something, you are going up and you are raising kind of thing, you are moving around, so you always. So I think Imam Ibn Khaldun was not having a very happy, comfortable life. He was actually going, moving around. Not only that, if you go through all these slides, you will know that there were so many enemies of uh, Ibn Khaldun, criticizing people, even scholars. The other scholars started criticizing because of his idea and everything. I think it's quite good. I think it is quite understandable when you have a different kind of approach, different kind of writing. For example, when you start writing the Muqaddimah, when you talk about the social aspect of Islam and the economic aspect of Islam, especially the people, right? It is not only about Islam. This is the problem with us. When there is an Islamic scholar, he has to talk about Islam, then he has to talk about Quran and Sunnah. I think many people, mashallah, already talked about it. But the problem here comes when you don't know how to relate those teachings, those Quranic verses and the prophetic hadith. If you don't know how to relate it into people's life, then actually we are having a big, huge gap. I think, to me, Imam Ibn Khaldun was the first in that line, the one who started relating to the people's life, observing people's life, rather being as a muhaddis, right? He rather being a scientific chair. I mean, hadith chair in Azhar or some other places. I think he started relating, and then that's the reason why he wanted to write Prolegomena in 5 months. Yeah, and then he obtained permission from the Sultan Abul Abbas, who captured Tunis. Then he came back to Tunis. This is the time he, after 26 years, he is coming back to Tunis, because he was out for administration work, right? So he was not able to go back to Tunis after 26 years. He went back, and then after some time, he went to Egypt. This is where actually he started teaching as a hadith lecturer of hadith in Maliki jurisprudence at Azhar University. Later appointed as a professor, right? So even Sultan of Egypt, see, from Tunis to Egypt, even the Sultan of Egypt made him as a Maliki justice. I mean, chief judge at the time of at the same time of professor. So look at Ibn Khaldun's life. He was in Egypt, in one place as an academician. He was a professor. The other side, he was in judiciary, uh, as a chief judge, right? Mm. And then also, as I told you, he was not having a very happy life. Look here. It is here, that was the time where he lost his wife and children on their way to Egypt. When he was coming to Egypt, they have to take the ship, and then when the ship sank, he lost his wife and children. Exactly, not happy life. Losing his wife and children, and then being alone. It's not, of course, happy life. Due to the atmosphere of envy and rivalry among local faqih and ulama, I told you, this is, excuse me. So this is what I was saying. The local faqih and ulama, the envy, the rivalry. He was relieved from his post and again reappointed by the Sultan, meaning to say that, there were many occasions he was appointed. Suddenly, someone will go to Sultan and he will say he is having a different idea. He's talking about this. His Muqaddimah talks about this, and then the fitna comes again, so he has to be reappointed. All these things, right? So that's how he becomes again and again. So before his death, again he was having appointments again, and then he became the the sixth time he received his appointment backs, like as a judge, as a professor, just before 2 weeks before his death in 1406. Yeah. Okay, so we talk about his work now. His work, as I told you, Muqaddimah Prolegomena. It is not a separate book. It is actually the first chapter of the book called Kitab al-Ibar wa Diwan al-Mubtada wal-Khabar fi Ayyam al-Arab wal-Ajam. Right? It's a long name. It is if you want to translate, it's like book of evidence. Kitab al-Ibar, evidence, record of beginnings and events. Is amazing. I think I like this translation, beginnings and events. In Arabic, it is Mubtada wa Khabar. I think those who knows Arabic grammar, I think you know about Mubtada wal Khabar, right? It's like a Jumla Ismiya. Then you have the first part is actually subject. Then you have noun, right? So the subject, adjectives, it becomes a sentence. So I think Mubtada wal Khabar is there. So I like the translation, a record of beginnings and events from the days of the Arabs, Persians, and Berbers and their power contemporaries. So he was very close to even Berbers. Even the last two chapters of this book talks about Berbers. So the first chapter is actually Prolegomena. This is actually introduction in this, because you see, when he wanted to write the history of the entire world that he knows that time up to his time. So he wanted to guide the reader before you go into the history of everything. Make sure that you know what exactly my observation about the history. So that's what people, when they open, they see the Muqaddimah, they see the wisdom that he talks about. Amazing, very, because the way of writing, when I gone through the translation of the book, even in Arabic, I don't think any other scholars they wrote in that manner before. The ideas, of course, it is there. I agree with you. It is not a new idea he talks. It is a new writing that I'm talking about. It is a new style of writing that I'm talking about. Because you see, he knows very well about the fiqh writing. Even he talks about in other book, he talk about fiqh batin, fiqh zahir, everything. He knows, of course, many fuqaha writing, but he wanted to be. He brought some, what do you call it? It is a kind of a revolution in writing writing industry. Then he wrote it. That is what I think I like about his writing. Straight away going to the point, rather than referring to Quranic verses and hadith. Of course, is everything at the background going on. The references all at his background going on, but he just wanted to give you the wisdom of each and every topic. It's amazing. Initially, it was a history of Maghrib. He wanted to do it, but later he widened the scope, become universal history. It is actually 7 books. Kitab al-Ibar is actually part of 7 books. The first one is actually introduction, which is Muqaddimah. Book number 2 until 5 covers the history of mankind, entire mankind until the time of Ibn Khaldun. The book number 6 and book number 7 cover the history of Berber peoples and the Maghrib. Right. So I think other than this work, Kitab al-Ibar, Imam Ibn Khaldun also wrote his own autobiography. Look, this is also something new, right? That time, bringing the own, because autobiography, because he lived for so long, almost 70 to 74 years, right? So at the end of his life, so he wanted to write his own autobiography. I think I will be more interested to read this book, Kitab at-Tarif, because I know his idea. Many people talk about Ibn Khaldun's work. I mean, Ibn Khaldun's idea, thought on economics and thought on sociology, but I really want to see how he managed his life with the issues, how he managed. I really want someone, right, because maybe out of modesty, Imam Ibn Khaldun didn't cover everything about his life. Maybe I would love to see someone who wrote his entire life, how he managed, how he was managing the issues while he was appointed as a judge, right? How he was actually managing or teaching to his students while he was a professor of hadith, right? While he was a Maliki faqih, while he was a political administrator, how he happened to see the things. So these are the things I think. I don't know whether I need to go through the book again, Kitab al-Ta'rif. I think maybe if you are interested, please go ahead. The book is available, Kitab al-Ta'rif, which is his autobiography, right? So there are so many, dimension that you look into his life. You don't only stuck with his one work. Usually, like I told you just now, I already got another book, Shifa Usail. People who talks about Imam Ibn Khaldun, they say that he is a modern scholar. He is actually a scientist. I mean, talk about epistemology, talk about philosophy and all. But he also talks about Sufism. He also talk about tasawwuf. So we need to see how far he talks about. There's another book which is actually not available. He talks about logic. That book is actually unfortunately not available. Some of the book they found as a copy of manuscript, and then later they published it. Some of them they couldn't find. Um, so I think that's how you look into a scholar, not only from one work, uh, from his life background. Yeah, I think that is the most important takeaway from these classes, because when we talk about every scholar in these classes, especially this semester, we not only talk about his work, we talk about his life. So I want you to relate his life to his work so that we can understand, we can have a complete package. um, All right. So now these are the factors that shaped his mind. Uh, of course, knowledge of Greeks, Mu'tazila, Ash'ariyya, Zahiriyya, Ikhwan al-Safa, Tasawwuf, and also Falsafa. Right? His teachers and professors are dual education system, like reason and revelation, socio-historical and intellectual issues on this time, the influence of his family, his personal experience. These are the factors that shaped his mind. Yeah? And this is the Muqaddimah that we are going to talk about. Um, so there are three things that Prolegomena is all about. Number one is error made by the past historians. Number two, avoid complacency and the changing conditions. Yeah. So it talks about the 14th century, of course. It talks about the life of the people of that time, and how he can see he saw that differences between Arabs and non-Arabs. That's why he wanted to bring that non-Arabs as well, because the place that he lives, you know.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Someone want join, but you didn't
Oh, I'm
require.
sorry. I'm sorry. I need to.
It's
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
Give me 1 second. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Okay. All right. So let us talk about okay, now yes, we learn about him, everything about his life and about his work, and now let's talk about his ideas. Yeah, one by one. I think I have 57 slides to go, but I don't think I will cover everything in this half an hour. I think most probably I will just go through. I think it will be easy for you to go through the slides as well. Um, okay, of course, there is no Ibn Khaldun if there is no man and society. So I think that is the most important theory of him. That's why he was able to, merge this, especially these two disciplines, what we call today sociology and economics. I think if you talk about economics, it is not only about numbers. Economics, it is not only about variables. It is not only about the data that we have today. It is all about ethics. It is all about lives. It's all about the resource that how you actually can handle. It's all about behavior. This is the most important thing, right? So now sociology. That's why sociology and economics has so many things in common, and and I think that is a kind of message coming from Ibn Khaldun, that he says that you cannot um, take away. I mean, you cannot take these numbers, the money, the value, the price, the profit. I mean, you cannot take those things away from a society, because you need to look into society and then relate yourself with those things so that you can actually make that meaningful. If you don't concern about life of the people and you only concern about the numbers, the profit, then there is no meaning for those profits. There is no meaning for those numbers. There's nothing. So that's why he is actually a great example to merge these two disciplines together, right? These are the economic ideas that he talks about in his work, especially in Muqaddimah. Economic methodology, religious foundation of economics, functions of gold and silver, division of labor and creation of wealth, supply and demand analysis, product and input markets, religion, government spending, taxation, economic growth and revenue. There is more: religion, leadership, motivation and economic growth, government and stages of economic development, the development of economic activities, technology and innovations. Yeah, I think there is more. Holding and regulated prices, ta'asir. He also talks about the consumer behavior and hierarchy of goods, the differences in the goods. He also talks about economic growth, Also, he talk about population growth, and then he also talks about the relationship between these two, economic growth and population growth. Now, this all looks like latest studies, like within 50 years or maybe 70 years. It looks like the latest studies are talking about economic growth and population growth. How do you see the relationship? Because you need to have those kind of software to see the relationship between these two. But what kind of software he was using? Right, only his brain. He started looking into the relationship, education, skills, and job opportunities. Amazing thing, he talks about the craft. So many places he talks about craft. In my translation, if I have to translate the word craft today, I would say technology. In a way that Imam Ibn Khaldun is actually talks about technology, because today what we call it, it's actually exactly what he mean by craft. The skills that he talks about, people are different. People are people become the capital based on their skills. That's why you will be seeing in his entire work, he talks about labor all the time. Because this is something, as I told you, talking about labor, talking about salary, uh, talking about working in a company, talking about learning skills, and then giving priority to the experts, and talking about the luxury life, and how do you create that luxury uh, environment. See, all these kind of ideas, I don't think scholars before him concentrate. I mean, they talk a lot about it. Maybe here and there, of course, they talk about it. But he gives a kind of importance to these kind of things, because he already guessed. Yes, his guessing was right, because after him, after 14th century, he already guessed. He already what we call it? It's a kind of a prophecy. Yeah, he already he sees the future, his vision. He saw that, of course, people in future based on, I mean, they will be paid based on their skills. I think that's what's happening today. Whatever he mentioned 600 years ago, it's been 600 years already after Imam Ibn Khaldun passed away. So he already saw that thing coming. So so many places he talks about labor and value, because what we call in fiqh is actually ajr, al-ujra, right? But most of the scholars that we talked earlier, they talk about production, they talk about they talk about the muzara'a, they talk about, of course, the agriculture, they talk about harvesting, cultivating crops, right? They talk about all those things. Of course, they talk about zakat, how do you pay for this, for that, of course. But if you look into the idea of salary people, very few idea talks about al-ujra, the salary, the wages. Very few. I mean, if you look into, for example, if you look into Imam Abu Yusuf work, uh, of course, it's quite long already. Before I mean, it's around 500 years ago. So he talks about, most of the time he talks about zakat and land and kharaj and everything, of course. But many scholars before him, they didn't pay much attention, more attention into wages and the payment of the wages. How do you exactly pay the wage? On what basis you pay the wage? Right? You see, whatever that we call it today, the human resources. How do you quantify your workers? How do you actually scale the work? What we call today key performance indicator. Yeah, we call it KPI, isn't it? So how exactly you are supposed to survey your workers? These are the things actually what mainly Ibn Khaldun talks about. So that's quite amazing, when I see the thing. Talks about economic growth, economic cause, education skills, job opportunities, inflation, and unemployment. Look, unemployment, he talks about it. When before the scholars, unemployment, it is something. because they will be saying whether they talk about the trading, whether they talk about exchanging, barter exchanges, the commodity exchanges. So you just need a commodity, you go to the market and you exchange. But later, the development, especially what we call it today, economic development. I think he is the scholar of economic development. So other scholars, while they were talking about going for the trading, going for exchanging commodities, Ibn Khaldun talks about the employment and what happens if there is not enough employment, how population comes, how immigrant people will come to country. See how deep he goes. He of course he is guessing, not only guessing, he actually saw the truth, he observed, and then he wrote. Economic growth and corruption, he talks about economic model of growth and decline. Hmm. Because he talks about the growth, of course, and then he also talks about what happens if everything grow, what happens, because there is a cycle that he talks about. The cycle, for example, one comes, one increases. When one increases, there is something will be decreasing. Then again, it comes to the place where it started. Then the process will go again, then develop again, then decrease again. So the cycle, amazing, amazing. I'm telling you. Seriously, this is what the especially the special concerns of Ibn Khaldun. Okay, so let's talk about few theories as far as we can go today, right? There are so many theories, of course, he has. Let's talk about a few theories. One of them is the theory of production. Yes, he talks about the factor of production, human labor. Right. Today of course, we talk about capital, land, labor. Right. These are the things for production. We talk about it. So he already talked earlier. Human labor to make profit and capital accumulation based on effort. Without human labor, there is no gain will be obtained. The labor is necessary. Result and the production is the result of human labor, right? And then he talk about human nature of production. Then he talks about what exactly labor to do with the social context. Then he talks about what labor will do in the international context. So individual, then social, then global. That's quite amazing. So this is social organization of the production. He talks about, because one person cannot actually, he actually can live, what they call it, subsistence farming. I think if you know the term, if I say the term right, it is called subsistence farming. We need to say that you live in a place, you have your house, and you are surrounded by few gardens, few vegetables, few fruits, and then you are good with it, and you make your own. You have your own livestock, you have your own chicken, you have your own cow for the milk, you have your own goat for at least you want to eat some goats. So this is a kind of self-sufficient farming. That is individually a man can do that, of course, can live like that, like people in kampong they do. They don't need anything else. They have everything they have, but not every single person can have that kind of place. Not every single person have that kind of skill. Then you need the social organization in order to fulfill other people's needs. So now I am a person, what I can do, I can come down, I know how to grow a plant. So let me help you to grow a plant. Um, in return, you pay me something so that I can take that thing and then I can buy from the market. So it all goes like that, from the individual, then goes to social. It's like, when people started growing in big number, they need the land, they need the water supply, and also they need some experts in working. They need some labor. So now it's a kind of two family working together, then three family working together, then it goes to socially, everybody coming and work in larger scale, right? Then you have subdivisions of the craft in each and everything, not only agriculture I'm talking. So many things. Simple operation for production requires collaboration of many men, and also you need technical background of many civilization, right? So this is a time where he was living. He was not living in one place, as I told you, Tunis, Fez, then he went to Egypt. So this is a place where many kind of civilization comes in, and then everybody share their, their advancement. I mean, they were sharing whatever the knowledge they have. Each particular kind of craft needs person to be in charge of it and skilled in it. So he talks about all these things. Amazing, you can go through it. Then he talks about the international organization. I told you, individual, social, then international. He talks about, the um, because he says that certain cities have crafts that others lack. So see now, he talks about cities. Um, of course, today, if I have to give you an example, you know this all. Um, you know, let's talk about the recent interview. I think not recently, some time ago, was done with Tim Cook, the CEO of iPhone. So he said this, right? I think I still remember. He said why we went to China. I think now they are no more in China. I think they are moving back to some other country, India perhaps. I don't know. I'm not sure. So he says that the reason we are going to China to manufacture iPhone is not because of low. It is not because of the low price. No, it's not. It's no more. There is no more low price in China. It is not because of the cost. It's because if I have to ask for, let's say in US, if I have to ask for the specialist in one, maybe you have full of room of experts just for one engineering. Let's say you want to see someone who is very good um, in making the chip, for example, then you have full of room of experts in that. But if I ask the same question in China, it will be full of football ground, football stadium. So just to be in one specialization, yeah. If you need engineering for once, because there's hundreds and hundreds and thousands of specialization in engineering. Um, in China, they have full of stadium. So now I just want to bring it here because Ibn Khaldun talks about, city. Every single city has a different sort of craft. Other people, they don't have it. It's because of their civilization. Someone is very good, in agriculture, especially the fruits. If you go to place like, Palestine, the way they make pomegranate, subhanallah, amazing. They have even festivals, pomegranate. They make the jam from pomegranate. They make the candies from pomegranate, of course, of course the juice and everything. So they only know how to, make it well, because it's not because they have the school and then they study. It's not because of they are going to the school and study. It's because of their civilization, and it is in the DNA. Remember, it is in the DNA. That's why some countries are very good in something, right? Like for example, we are in Malaysia. We are very good in rubber industry, and then tin industry, and then the palm oil, of course. The other countries, they don't have it, they are lack of it. So especially, I tell you this, let me tell you this, the management of, especially the road, the making uh, roads, I think Malaysians, they are very good. Until even India, they hired people from Malaysia to come into India and then start building the roads. I have been many roads in India, which was built by Malaysians, proudly Malaysians, right? And then even in my own place in India, in my own city, there is a MRT, which is built by Malaysians, right? Proudly Malaysians, right? So what I'm trying to tell here that there are few. There's the specialities. There are few amazing, craft. Only it is belong to few countries. Yes, that's how he talks about those things. The more numerous the active population, the greater the production. So these are, yeah, we will come back to the population. There's another theory for that. Yeah, right. Okay, the next theory, because I have only a few minutes left. Theory of value, money, price. He talks about the value. He talks about that, of course, any product is equal. He talks about if there is no labor, there is no value. Then he talks about the money. Money should have that measurement. And then he talks about the prices. You see that value, money, prices. Then, which brings to the theory of distribution, the next one. He talks about the here also he talks about fixation of remuneration based on the law of supply and demand. He talks about salary. He talks about profit. And then he talks about the taxes. Right. So this is the fixation of the remuneration of these elements. But later he talks about the existence of an optimum distribution. How do you make this optimum? Salary again, profit again, taxes again. Yeah. Then he talks about the cycle that I told you earlier, population cycle. What happens when there is a population? For example, when there is a population growth, when this is grows, the production also will grow. It will, which will bring an increase in demand and production, because there is a population, of course. Then you need more production. When you need more production in a city, for example, I think this is also kind of example that I can give you. I want to talk to you about. Let's say you take an example, like for example, Kuala Lumpur, a city became the city, and you can see it is very obvious. You can see that every people in other cities, in other state, always they want to come to Kuala Lumpur. I think you know that. You know very well, because most of you come from other cities, wants to stay here. Then what happened that the population grow. When the population keep on growing, there is a demand. So you need to supply more. When you need to supply more, you need more people to do the production. That is the reason why the immigrants are coming to the city. You got my point. It is impossible to take away the immigrant from the city. It is impossible, because otherwise you cannot supply. For example, there is no immigrant in Kampong, exactly, right? Because in your Kampong, there is no need any immigrant to come and work, because there is no demand, only in the cities. And then what happens? He also talk about later what happens when there is cities increasing. Then there's a possibility of geographical expansion. Then there's a possibility of expanding in agricultural production. When later, what happened that it will not keep on increasing and increasing. In one place, you have this time. You will have the time where actually population will decrease. This is something very hard to understand, but I can see it, because you see, because those days there were so many diseases are coming and going, especially people in the city. His time, plague comes, one shot comes, wipe out the people. In fact, it's most of his family, his own Ibn Khaldun's family, died during the plague. He luckily he survived. Um, so what I'm trying to tell that even he talks about, when I was going through his writing, he says that it is always important to make sure that you live in city, and you make sure that you have free, open spaces. You got my point. You must have the open spaces when you are living in a city, because why? Those days there were livestock. There were so many animals living together with the people. When you close everything, the smell, the it is always in the air. and then people started breathing the same thing, and then they will have a disease, new kind of diseases. I think now it's quite I think quite understandable. When we don't, when we are living in an apartment, everything closed. So they, alhamdulillah, luckily I have seen like city like Kuala Lumpur amazing, because they have the flow, the airflow always considered. But please, you haven't seen the city what I'm describing. You haven't seen, you haven't come to Mumbai, you haven't been to Kolkata. You come and see, or maybe Dhaka, for example. Come and see, then you know the city full of people, full of places, full of closing areas. There is no open areas. In one room, where supposed to two people should be living, there are 20, 30 people are living. So what happens? What Ibn Khaldun says is correct. The population cycle, because the people will increase, and then suddenly now today it's clear, especially the COVID-19, what's happening. Especially you take for example Italy, people live in that city. What happened today? Many people in the city now is actually the numbers are decreasing. It's all actually interconnected. I think I just want you to know this. Yeah, I think you can talk about the public finance cycle, government spending, public finance cycle, taxations, and then of course this is additional slides. I just put it in order for you to easily understand supply, demand, market mechanism, price in goods, market, wages, yeah, market structure, wage differential in professions, role of prices in economic growth. Yeah. Okay, I think that's all. I will just give you the attendance. Yeah.